end of the year. Everywhere on TV.
Hi everyone, I hope you're all doing well. My name is Cleopatra, and in today's video I decided that I would share with you guys all the books that I've read this year. And before we get started, I will be talking about the plot and everything that takes place in this book. So if you don't want any spoilers, I would either suggest that you can skip some of the timestamps in the video, or honestly just don't watch the video altogether. But let's just get started. So just for some context, this year in terms of reading books, I didn't really have a specific genre that I was going for. I kind of just wanted to read whatever. Since I was kind of getting back into reading, I just wanted to read a lot of the recommendations that people were giving. So you're going to notice a lot of these books they're basically all like book TikTok or Booktok recommendations. So that's pretty much where that's coming from. But the first series that I started off the year with was the Maid series. I enjoyed the series. It was actually really good. I ended up finishing this in, I think it was like 4 days. I ended up finishing all 3 books, so I sped through them. So the first book is The Sweetest Oblivion. This follows Nico and Elena, and we can see how the relationship blossoms and develops and forms. One thing that I really did like about this book, and I wrote it down in my notes. So I really enjoyed reading about the connection between Nicholas and Elena. I also really appreciated how Nicholas was always looking after Elena and how he always wanted to protect her and how she was his #1 priority. It was also really interesting seeing somebody who was written as a very closed off and cold person having a sweet side or selfless and nurturing side for Elena. So that was one thing I really appreciated about the book. Out of all 3 characters, out of all the 3 men, I feel like I like Nico the least, which is quite interesting because I feel like a lot of people really do like Nico. I think the only thing for me personally that I didn't really like is I wish he had opened up a bit more emotionally, and I wish he had talked more about his past and why he was like so closed off and why he was the way that he was. But apart from that, it wasn't a bad read. It was good. And would I read it again? Probably not, but I enjoyed reading it at the time, so there's that. Then the next one in the series was The Madness Obsession. I really liked this one. I really loved Christian and Gianna's book, and I also loved how all of these novels were like interconnected as well. I think one thing for me personally that really stood out about Christian was I really liked how he opened up to Gianna about his past, and he talked about why he is the way that he is. I also loved how he was seeking like help, like he was seeing a therapist throughout the entirety of the novel, just because he wanted to better himself as a man and just become the best version of himself when he was with Gianna, and to also protect his family. So I felt like that was really sweet and that was really cute, and that's one thing I really liked about this novel. And then lastly, there is The Darkest Temptation, and I feel like this was the darkest one out of all the novels, just because there is like, I know kidnapping takes place in this book. She's definitely held hostage for a significant period of time, so it was just, a lot was going on in this novel. I think for me personally, like the romantic element that took place between Rowan and Mila, it definitely was not genuine and it was not natural, because I definitely feel like there was a heavy level of Stockholm Syndrome being influenced on why she had caught feelings for Rowan. And overall, it was really interesting to read. That's kind of all I have to say about this, unless I wrote something else in my notes back in January. What I really enjoyed about this novel is seeing Rowan's dark and villainous character contrasting with his caring and nurturing personality/character towards Mila. It was entertaining to see how Rowan slowly began to fall for Mila and how he couldn't imagine living without her and experiencing life without her. So I feel like that was really sweet. So once again, he was somebody that initiated, like initially in the beginning of the novel, he was very closed off and he was just very turned off by the idea of love. But then once he meets Mila, he begins to realize like, hey, maybe I could actually fall in love and be with somebody that cares about me. So that was really nice. So yeah, that was pretty much the main series. If I had to rate it out of 10, I would probably give it maybe like a 7.5 out of 10. I liked it. So there's supposedly supposed to be another novel coming out. I don't know when, but yeah. The next series that I read was the Dreamland Billionaires series. So I read the first one, which was Fine Print, and then I also read Terms and Conditions. So excited for the final offer that's coming out in January. But pretty much for Fine Print, it just follows around Rowan and Zara. Once again, for this novel, I just really liked how caring Rowan was, how Rowan was towards Zara. And I also loved how in the beginning, well, how should I put this? He had always cared about Zara from the beginning of the novel, but also seeing the relationship progress was like really sweet as well. And it was also really nice seeing him finally like open up to somebody and talk about the way that he feels. And it was also really sweet seeing how they kind of just took care of each other and they always looked out for each other. So that's pretty much all I have to say for this novel. I have tabbed a couple of pages because you can see I really like tabbing my novels. But that's kind of pretty much everything that I really liked about this novel. A line that kind of like stuck out to me was like really cute is when he was like, I want to steal more of Zara's purse. Anything to recreate that smile she has while looking at a pail of rocks and a lopsided snowman. I want to own her smile just as much as I want to own every other part of her. That's so sweet. Oh my gosh. That's page 347. So I found that to be like really cute how he just really liked Zara and who she was as a person. So I feel like that was really sweet. Then there was Declan and Iris. I feel like I kind of liked this. I kind of liked Terms and Conditions a tad bit more than I did like Fine Print. So pretty much once again this follows around Declan and Iris, but this one has a marriage of convenience aspect to it. It was really interesting to see how in the beginning Declan thought he was somebody that couldn't be loved and he was undeserving of love because of, you know, just the emotionally abusive relationship that he had with his father in like his previous years. So it was really nice to see how he was finally opening up to Iris and how he was trying to become a better version of himself for her. There were definitely points in the novel where I kind of sat there and I kind of hated Declan just because he had made quite a lot of rude remarks towards Zara. Like I remember there's this one part in the novel, like midway, if I can find it. I definitely can find it. I can like put pages and stuff like that. But I remember they were trying to show one of their investors the amusement park and he had told Iris that she could have a day off, but then he ended up calling her on her day off and then he was asking her for her help and she was trying to help Declan, but then at the end he ended up blaming everything on her and saying that it was her fault, and it really upset her and it really hurt her. So seeing him try to like work not backwards, but seeing him put in the effort to like rebuild the trust that they had and apologize for what he had done was really nice to see. Another thing that I really enjoyed about this novel is Iris and Cal's relationship. It is so cute. Their friendship is so adorable. I always love how Cal is always looking out for Iris and has her best interests, and I just love how, like, I just love the chemistry that these two have with each other. So I'm very excited to read Cal's novel and just see him have his turn to fall in love. Next one is the Tessa Bailey series. I had read It Happened One Summer back in 2021, and then I had read this one in 2022. This one, it was a good novel. I don't really have much to say about it. Brendan and Pepper were cute. That's pretty much all I have to say. For Hook, Line, and Sinker, one thing I really liked about Fox and Hannah's relationship is it wasn't necessarily initiated off of physical attraction. I really liked how in the beginning of the novel they were like, okay, we're going to try to be friends and we're going to try to just get to know each other on just a genuine basis, and we don't want to like include any like physical attraction to this. Like, I just want to get to know this guy, I want to get to know this girl, and I just want to see if we can be friends. So I feel like seeing them work on their friendship and seeing them like actually care for each other was something that was like really sweet to see throughout the novel. So I feel like I really appreciated that about this book. So that's kind of all I have to say. So the rest of the books that I will be reviewing are all standalone books. So the first one that I read is We Were Liars. The ending was good. Like, when people say the ending catches you off guard, it definitely was not something that I was expecting. So I really appreciated this. I really appreciated that about this book. One thing I did not like was the way that the novel was structured. I found that it was really hard for me to keep up with it and to continue reading. Like, this book has under 300 pages, but I remember it took me almost 3 months to finish it just because I would start reading it. Like, again, it all had to do with the structure of the novel. I found that the part 1 of this novel was really slow and it kind of dragged itself on kind of long. So there's also that as well. The next one is The Love Hypothesis. I love this novel. This one was such a cute read. Olivia and Adam, I believe. Yes, Olivia and Adam were so cute. It was really cute seeing the relationship progress and seeing how Adam had always cared for Olivia and he always had her best interests at mind. So again, I just really enjoyed following the two of them throughout the relationship. There wasn't really anything that stuck out to me. It was just a really entertaining read, so I liked it. So the next novel is A Spanish Love Deception. Oh my goodness, I mean, it wasn't a bad read. It's just that the way people were hyping this book up on Booktok made me think that I was going to be reading something that was just phenomenal. Again, not to say that it was bad, but I feel like my expectations were set so high that when I finally read the book, I was like, oh, it was like, it's called The Spanish Love Deception, but they only spent a weekend in Spain, which I was like, huh, interesting. But it was just really sweet seeing how Aaron would always go out of his way to just care for Catalina and to always make sure that she was taken care of, and he always had her best interest in mind when he was with her. So it was also really nice seeing how the relationship progressed and developed throughout the novel. One thing that I didn't really understand was closer towards the end of the novel, when Aaron kind of just brought up that his dad had cancer. Again, it's really sad, but I feel like to bring up such a crucial piece, or I don't know, I feel like to just bring up something so important and severe towards the very end of the novel is kind of just random. Like, I feel like they could have ended the novel without including that piece, because I kind of just felt like it wasn't really that significant. But I mean, like, I guess there wasn't really another point where you could have brought it up, because I mean, like, if you had mentioned it just before they had left for Spain, then I feel like that would have just been another reason for her to be like, oh, you know what, Aaron, like, you don't need to like go with me, like, stay back. So there was also that too, but it was a cute read. I really liked it. I'm also excited to read The American Roommate Experiment, which follows Catalina's friend. I forget what her name is, but that one I am looking forward to reading. So yeah. The next one is The Silent Patient, and I read this back in, I believe it was October. This one is very different from all the other novels that I've read, because this is a psychological thriller. My friend Theo is a very troubled man. So pretty much Theo is the therapist that we're following around, or the psychotherapist that we're following around in this novel. He ends up switching to a new psychiatric ward where he's treating this patient named Elise Benderson. And pretty much throughout the novel, as I'm saying, it follows him treating Elise as he's trying to figure out why she is the way that she is, and why she is silent, and why she is not speaking. And like, this book was actually very interesting. It definitely kept me on my toes. The ending was very ambiguous. It caught me off guard. I didn't really know how to process it. So pretty much how this went, or how this goes, is from the beginning of the novel, Alicia is pretty much saying how somebody's following her and she feels like she's being watched all the time, and her husband doesn't take her seriously, so then he ends up putting her on medication. And then after, she ends up killing her husband, and that's kind of how she ended up in the psychiatric ward. But then the interesting thing with Theo is, even though Theo is there to quote unquote treat Alicia and to help her get better, he is the reason why she's actually there, because the man that was following her throughout the entire novel is actually Theo. So these events have already happened, so she's like re-encountering the stories and everything. We can see that through like her journal entries. So pretty much Theo is the man that's following her, and the reason why he's following her is because Elise's husband is having an affair with Theo's wife. So those two are getting together, and he finally figured that out, and he was like really pressed about it. So then he ended up like stalking Elise for that reason, and he was the one who ended up breaking into the house and like tying both of them up, and he threatened them, and he didn't like actually kill them or anything. Like, he definitely caused them a lot of like emotional harm and trauma, but apart from that, he didn't like do anything physically. So when she did choose to shoot her husband, that was kind of her own choice, and her own, like, she kind of chose to do that on her own. So I found that really interesting. But it was just really, it was kind of unsettling to see how Theo knew why she was there, and he was the reason why she was in that institute, and yet he tried to act like he was there to help her. And throughout the entire novel, you read it and you're like, my goodness, this therapist is such a genuine, kind man. Like, I can't believe he's out here putting in this effort, and he's sitting in these sessions trying to talk to her to like debunk and figure out why she is the way that she is, only to find out that he is the reason why she behaves in that way. And this man would have gotten away with it if he had just taken her journal and burnt it, because at the end of the novel, a police officer shows up to Theo's new home that he's moved in with his wife, and because he still ended up staying with his wife, and then like the officer like pulls out the journal, and then he starts reading the passages that are inside the journal, and I was like, oh my goodness, that's just crazy. So that's kind of everything that took place in this novel. So yeah. Okay, so we just have 3 more novels that we have to go through. So the first one is Life is Too Short. I really appreciate this. I feel like, in my opinion, this is probably one of my top romance reads of this year, or honestly one of my top books of this year. And pretty much this book follows Vanessa Prince and Adrian Copeland. So pretty much Vanessa Prince is a like YouTube personnel, and she's been diagnosed with ALS, and her mother has had it before, and her older sister has had it before, and they've both passed away, and she's also seen the effects that ALS has brought and caused onto her family, and she also has the potential of catching it as well. So what her intention is she's just trying to live her best life, because she doesn't know how long she's going to live for. And then there's Adrian Copeland, who is a lawyer, and he's also her neighbor. So pretty much throughout the entirety of the novel, Vanessa is trying to take care of her niece, and her niece's name is Grace, because she has a younger sister, and her younger sister is just like heavily into drugs, and she's abusing them. So obviously she's not in the right state of mind to care for a child or for another form of life. And pretty much how the relationship is kind of initiated is one night Grace is just really crying. Like Vanessa can't get her to stop crying. So then Adrian's just really fed up. So he comes over in the middle of the night and he like helps her soothe Grace. And Grace ends up like she stops crying. And just throughout there we can see the relationship forming. One thing I really appreciated about this novel is there wasn't a heavy emphasis on forming a physical connection, which I really appreciate, because I feel like in a lot of romance novels they're very like high on like lustful desires, but I feel like for this one you can see that Adrian and Vanessa, they just wanted to be friends. They just wanted to get to know each other more on a personal level. And another thing that I also really loved about this novel is every single time Vanessa and Adrian were together, they always bettered each other, if that makes sense. Like we can see like throughout the novel Adrian was really struggling with forgiving his dad and like, you know, rekindling the relationship that he had with his father, just because he had developed a lot of resentment towards him because he had cheated on his mom, and he felt like that destroyed the family dynamic and that really hurt his mom, which it did. And we can also see how like throughout that process, like Vanessa helps Adrian like process those emotions and get to a point in his life where he's willing to forgive his father and now, you know, be on this new journey and path to form a better relationship with her. And even for Vanessa too, I love how even though Adrian didn't have all the answers to Vanessa's questions, he was always ready to listen to her, and he was always ready to just be there to comfort her throughout whatever she was struggling with, which is something that I really appreciate. And I also love how at the end of the novel they became one really cute family. This is definitely one of those novels that I kind of shed a couple tears when I was reading because it was sad. I also really loved how this novel touched on how it can be difficult, or how it can be rather challenging to love somebody that does have a chronic illness. And I'm not saying that this is like an authentic portrayal of what it is, but it was very refreshing to read a novel that dealt with that kind of like subject matter, because it's definitely not something that I was expecting, because when I had read Life is Too Short I didn't expect it to go that in depth, but I really liked it. So I would definitely recommend reading this book. This was like a really good book. I really liked it. And then the next book is It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. Girl, I swear this is like, I searched it up on Amazon like what was the #1 book of the year. I believe the most purchased book on Amazon was It Ends With Us. Everyone and their mother was talking about this novel, so I was like, you know what, I'm gonna pick it up, I'm gonna read it, I'm gonna see what it's all about. And I've tabbed so many pages in this novel. This book was definitely an emotional roller coaster. I really wish that they had put a trigger warning in the beginning of this novel, just because it does deal with a lot of subjects of domestic abuse and just violence in general. And it was really interesting to hear about Lily and Ryle's relationship. The interesting thing that I found is in the beginning of the novel, the way that Ryle was begging Lily to sleep with her, I just found that to be very off-putting, and I found that to be very weird. But then after they ended up getting married, and he ended up being abusive later on in their marriage, and then when she finally decided, you know what, I can't really do this anymore, and she kind of like left the home that they were living in. She found out she was pregnant with their daughter, and then once her daughter was born, she realized, you know, we can't continue to do this anymore. Like, I don't want to stay in this relationship. I don't want to continue that cycle of trauma, because she grew up in a household where her dad was really abusive towards her mom, and she had sworn to herself that she would never put herself in that position. And she was like, you know what, I'm never going to be in an abusive relationship. And that's kind of where the title It Ends With Us comes from, because she was talking to Ryle, and then she was like, where is the line in the novel? This was actually one thing I actually really liked about the novel, because like the ending part was actually, it actually wasn't bad. So pretty much it goes, cycles exist because they are excruciating to break. It takes an astronomical amount of pain and courage to disrupt a familiar pattern, which is very true. Sometimes it seems easier to just keep running in the same familiar circle rather than facing the fear of jumping and possibly landing on your feet. My mother went through it, I went through it, and I'll be damned if I allow my daughter to go through it. I kissed her on the forehead to make her a promise. It stops here with me and you. It ends with us. So I feel like that was definitely something that I really appreciated, because the choice that Lily made at the end to not stay with Ryle was definitely a difficult one. You can tell that even though Ryle was abusive throughout the entirety of the novel, or I guess throughout like the half of the novel, or the lateral half, like when he started being abusive, you can tell that yes, he wasn't the best partner, but Lily still loved him despite everything that he had done to her. So the fact that she had set her foot down and she was like, you know, we're not going to do this anymore, and I know this is going to be a difficult decision for both of us, but it's what's best. It just goes to show how she had definitely matured a lot from the beginning of the novel. And that was definitely one thing I really appreciated about this novel. Okay, so the last novel is Ugly Love. This one is another Colleen Hoover book, and this one was definitely a lot. I don't know. This book. I didn't hate it, but I also didn't love it. There was definitely some issues that I had with this novel. So pretty much what this novel is it follows Tate and Miles around, and pretty much Tate likes Miles, and Miles kind of likes Tate as well, but he just wants to engage in a casual relationship. And we can see, because he says this on page 83, because I tabbed this, and he pretty much says, "I'm attracted to you, Tate," he says in a low voice. "I want you, but I want you without any of the other stuff." Once again, insinuating that he kind of just wants a casual friends with benefits relationship. And the interesting thing is, Tate really likes Miles, and she knows that what she's doing isn't right, and she knows that it's wrong, and she knows that it's going to hurt her, and yet she continues to engage in this behavior, which is unfortunate to see, because you can see there's many instances in the novel where they both acknowledge subconsciously, like, hey, what we're doing is not right, this isn't healthy for either of us, and they also vocalize it multiple times throughout the novel where they're like, you know what, this isn't a good idea, we should just cut this off, and yet they continue to persist and go forward. And then at the exact same time kind of question why they're so hurt throughout the end of the novel, or towards the end of the novel, which it was sad to read about, to be honest. But apart from that, it also follows another girl named Rachel, and we learn about we learn about Miles and Rachel's relationship, which was pretty much, they were young, they were in love, they ended up expecting a child, but then their child ended up dying once the child was born, when they got into a car accident, and then Rachel ended up blaming their child's death on Miles, and he carried that pain and that resentment with him for like the past 6 years, so that's why he's never been in a relationship. And one of the main reasons why he engages in this casual relationship is because he feels as though he is unworthy to be loved, and he feels like he can't be loved for what has happened in his past. And I feel like once he starts to open up and talk about his traumatic experience with everything that's happened in his past relationships, it begins to give him the opportunity to open up and to realize that yes, he can be loved again, and he is deserving of love. And it was nice seeing that. One of the main things that I didn't really like about the novel was the fact that there was no mention of like counseling or seeking any type of professional help, because you can definitely see that what Tate and Miles were doing to each other was not healthy. And to see them go from, you know, a friends with benefits relationship that was very toxic, and seeing how they had hurt each other, to them just getting married a couple months later, in my opinion, just doesn't seem realistic. I really, once again, wish that they had taken the time to maybe like go their separate ways, work on themselves, and then maybe come back again together at the very end, and, you know, form a new relationship and try to become better partners for themselves. I feel like when they got married at the end, it was kind of forced in a sense. I feel like that was kind of like the ending that was just given just to appease to the general public, because I feel like if they didn't end up together, a lot of people would have been upset. So there was also that aspect of it. Overall, it was an okay book. I wouldn't really consider this like a really good book in my, like, it was an okay book at the end of the day. I feel like this really just goes to show how love is a very powerful emotion, and if we are not loved properly, it really just distorts our view and our understanding of love for honestly the rest of our life, until we meet somebody else that helps us unlearn that we are deserving of love, and that we can be loved, and that even if we do experience a traumatic event in the past, that we can unlearn that, and we can put ourselves on a journey and a road to become a better version of ourselves. So yeah. So that is it for today's video. I really hope you guys enjoyed it, and I really hope you guys liked me reviewing all these books. I'm definitely going to be reading a lot more books in 2023, so I would love to do another one of these books, or not books, I would love to do another one of these book review videos if you guys are interested in seeing them. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye!
Oh, and my hair sleigh bells in the air. The only thing I'm missing is you. Stockings on fire.